I want to talk about why you should do a newsletter and also what would make it an effective newsletter. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and I've been doing digital marketing for 20 years. I own a marketing company for about 7 years, and I've been freelancing for a little over 10 years as a content marketer. In this video, I'm going to dive into an article by Blair Enns from Win Without Pitching on what makes an effective newsletter. This article he wrote is so insightful that I want to share it with you with a little bit of my commentary alongside of it. Before we dive into the insights of his article, I want to pull out his framework from his manifesto, Win Without Pitching. In Win Without Pitching, he talks about 3 stages that the buyer goes through and then the steps that we must take to facilitate people through the buying cycle. We need to understand where the prospect is, which stage they are, and then to meet them where they are. To deliver or to respond to them at the wrong way, as if they're in the stage that they're not in, will lead to losing opportunities that very well could have been had. The way that we facilitate the prospect through the buying cycle is first, we educate the unaware, so they are unaware of the problem of which they need assistance. Second, once they are aware of that problem, then they move into the interested stage. And when they're interested, that's when we inspire. And inspiration can come in many forms. It can be stories. The idea is that we inspire them forward towards intent. So now that they understand the problem, they're aware of it, they've been inspired by it, they move to the third stage, which is they begin to form an intent and make the decision. And our job in that point is to reassure the intent. It's to reassure them that the intent that they have formed is the appropriate response to the education and the inspiration that they've had. To be a successful salesperson is to be a facilitator of these 3 stages and these 3 actions within these 3 stages. This is one of the insights that was impactful for me many years ago when I first discovered it, because I didn't like the idea of persuading people to buy something they didn't want. The Win Without Pitching framework gave me a understanding and a vocabulary to help me be an effective salesperson. And ultimately, to be an effective salesperson in the Win Without Pitching model is to be an effective facilitator. And so that's the foundation of which his advice about newsletters sits on top. Now we're going to dive into one of Blair's insights: quit selling, start helping. This first insight comes from the second paragraph. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, so I will put a link in the description below if you would like to read the whole article, which I would highly recommend that you do. I want to pull out just a few nuggets from this article that are worth featuring and highlighting and discussing a little bit more. So the first thing I want to highlight is this section that says, the unaware prospect does not see that he has a problem that you are able to help him with. Notice that our perspective here is the prospect's and not yours. Either he sees a need in your ability to help, or he does not. The fact that you see a need is almost immaterial. So just because you see the need for him doesn't mean that he sees it himself. And so we need cognitive empathy. We have to put our mind inside of the prospect and to see things the way they're seeing it. And our job is to help bridge the gap between what we see from our position and what they see from their position, so that they come to our side where they see for themselves the situation, the problem, and you, me, as the person or the company that can help them through that challenge. Let's jump into the second passage that's worth noting. This is under the "Let me tell you what you need" headline. You do not create need, nor do you tell someone their need. Your job is to uncover it. Our job is to uncover it. It's to help them see the need they already have, of which they don't see as a need, or perhaps they don't see as a problem that they need it. This is helpful for me because it changes the way that you interact with someone and the level that you interact. If you've gone to Disney World, if you've traveled to Georgia, to California, if you've been to these places, you have a perspective from those places. But how do you communicate to someone what that is before they're there? I'll use marriage as another example. How do you tell someone what it's like to be married? How do you tell someone what it's like to be a parent? If they haven't been married, if they haven't been a parent, it can be quite difficult. And that's really the challenge that we have, is part of our communication strategy. It's part of our way of helping others to see the need, see the problems that we can see, but to see it through their eyes, so that they then, after seeing it, decide to act on it and resolve that problem. As we go down further in this article, we educate the unaware and they see the need that we saw for them. We can then move to inspiration. They are now interested and we can inspire. So let's look at this, what he says about inspiration. Your objective, once someone acknowledges their problem, but prior to them forming intent to act on it, is a powerful tool for helping to form that intent. But it is rare that you can inspire someone to their need. I think this is really important because once we are aware, the stories, they're very inspirational to us. But what we fail to recognize is that those stories are not inspirational to someone that does not see it as a problem or as a need or as something that they want. And stories can actually hinder us from educating the unaware. And so we can't get ahead of ourselves. What can happen is that people who are in sales, they move to that inspiration stage, they share their inspirational stories, and the prospect is stuck. They don't move forward. In fact, they might actually regress and pull away. Part of that is because of a failure to understand where the prospect is and meeting them where they are. But the other failure that comes as a result of the prospect not being ready or us failing to uncover that need for them is to discard them altogether. And this is where the value of the newsletter comes into view. Let's read this next passage that Blair says. The second mistake made after hearing a no is to cross the prospect off the list and discard them. This is a symptom of the hunter mentality that characterizes the common business development approach of shoot, miss, and move on. Everyone you meet, while they may not be ready to buy now, they may be a prospect that will buy later, or their company may move into a stage of which they do have that need and you do offer the solution to what they have. My first website project, I literally called through a business directory in the city that I lived in. And until I found someone that needed a website, and I happened to get someone on the list that needed a website right then, I met them, I got a deposit, and we did a website project. But I completely discarded everyone else on that list. Everyone else that could have needed a website now and just didn't see the reason for it. Or perhaps the website they needed wasn't going to be a need for them for another 3, 6, or 12 months. So I missed the opportunity to do something with those people other than, oh, thank you for your time and hang up. I had an opportunity to invite them to something, to invite them to a newsletter. And this brings us to the next section that I want to highlight under helpful tools, a newsletter as a helpful resource. So here's what Blair says. While most unaware prospects will not be sold to or inspired, the majority will accept helpful, unbiased, fact-based information on their situation. And one of the better vehicles for such information is a newsletter. No, not the type of newsletter that talks about staff birthdays and your latest and greatest work, but newsletters that position you as the expert and provide valuable information in your area of expertise to the prospect. So from their point of view, you are helping them in the way that they need and want that help. And that becomes an opportunity for us with our newsletter to continue to extend that helping hand after we've made that phone call, after we've sent that email, after we've connected on LinkedIn. It's a way to stay connected in an ongoing capacity where we demonstrate our expertise and continue to inform them and help them. So as they are exposed to our newsletter, they can see the information that will help reveal to them the need that they have or the need that they will eventually have. This is a wonderful opportunity to play that game in an ongoing capacity because it becomes a sustainable way to do business development, to get new clients for your freelancing, for your business. I had one client that followed me for a year on my email newsletter. And I didn't even know he was reading it. And about a year yet later, I got an email from him in a response to one of my emails and said, hey, I'm ready to talk to you about working together. I have another client that I worked with. I used to have a marketing company, and he actually followed me during those days. And we actually met about doing a project, and we didn't end up doing anything. Fast forward, he ended up getting on my newsletter list after I became a freelancer in 2014. 10 years after I originally met him, he emailed me and said, hey, I'm ready to start working with you. And so we worked for a couple years on some pretty cool projects. So you just never know how long it'll take. But if you have this system in place that's nurturing those contacts, then you have a lot of opportunities that you can continue to garner that may take a little while to come to fruition, but eventually will circle around. If you really can figure out and hone in on what you're doing and the type of information to share, your newsletter can hopefully accelerate that process so it doesn't take an entire decade. Let me jump into the last passage that I think is super helpful to close this out as we talk about newsletters. This comes from the section, what comes after no? So this is the next step. So what do you do once you've heard no? 3 things. First, thank the prospect for their time. That's what I did when I was calling through my list during that cold calling era. So I did the first step, but I was missing the other steps. So second, tell them you will follow up down the road. 6 months is a good rule of thumb. That's the second piece. And then this is really where it comes into the newsletter. You're not asking permission, you're merely stating your intent. And your third point is to request help between now and then. So here's what he recommends. Until then, we publish a monthly newsletter resource for clients on the subject of X, your expertise. And I'd be happy to add you to the distribution if this is of interest to you. Would you care to receive it? Properly framed, your take rate on your newsletter should be over 50%. When you make that follow-up call in 6 months, your prospect may still be unaware, but if you properly helped him, you will have set the tone for far more fruitful and rewarding conversation, one that will someday lead to a yes. So the key idea is to help them between now and that next point of contact. And social media, email, and all of that wrapped into a newsletter, which you can distribute through these different platforms, is a powerful and great tool to do this. When I did cold calling, it was difficult because to call through a list took a lot of time to call every single person on the list and talk to every single person. I discovered networking, and networking was a place where everyone came to one room and I could meet a few dozen people in one evening. They all came to the same place. In a fraction of the time, I could make more contacts, higher quality. And so networking was just a better alternative to cold calling. I did more of that and I got more opportunities that came from that. And the same is true for newsletters. It's a way for you to continue to cultivate opportunities. In my book, Path to the Freelancer, I talk about 2 different sales approaches. I talk about the crock pot and the grill. The grill is this high heat, high intensity fire on your steaks, on your burgers. And then I talk about the crock pot, which is you're putting ingredients in and you're letting it simmer for several hours. And that's the idea of the newsletter, is it gives you an opportunity to simmer your prospects into a deliciously tasting context. And if your newsletter is good, it'll be something where they want to read it, where the things you're sharing are things they have to read. The newsletters I think about, they send me so many good things that I don't have enough time to keep up with all the things that they're sending me. I want to read everything they send me. I don't have the time to do it. I end up missing some. And it gives me this sense of like, oh, I missed out on something. And so that's really the sweet spot for a newsletter, is to have that kind of thing where everything you send is something that is of value and it's helpful, so that when you are ready, you're the expert they're going to buy from, that they're going to hire, that they're going to sign up for your software. At the end of the article, Blair talks about the difference between the hunter and the farmer. And the farmer is more in line with that crock pot type of idea. So a newsletter is a powerful tool. I would recommend you consider using it. Send out an email newsletter, start getting emails. You can use newsletter functions from LinkedIn, which is really powerful, Substack. There are a lot of platforms out there that you can leverage for the email, like MailChimp. But ultimately, whatever you do, just start. The most important step is to have the habit of creating and then distributing, putting it out there. And it doesn't have to be perfect on how you do it, when you do it, but just start doing something and do it consistently over time. And over time, you'll start to see the fruit of your labor. Now that I've talked about newsletters, if you're interested in following me, you can sign up for my email newsletter on my website. I'll put a link in the description below. I also have a newsletter that I post on LinkedIn as well. And you can also subscribe to this channel to continue to get video updates as well. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and I'll see you on the next video.
Are you a small business owner? Have you hit a glass ceiling where year over year, you cannot rise above a certain revenue level? Check out Jason Scott Montoya's book, The Jump, to discover how to level up your leadership and pivot your entrepreneurial passion to the highest level.